Hey guys, this is John Hang, and today I'm going to talk about how to manage your money, especially if you've just graduated college and are finally starting to make a salaried pay. The method that I'm talking about today is the 50-30-20 rule, and it's a super simple way of managing your money, especially if you have no experience doing that at all. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I was 21 years old when I got my first real paycheck, and though it wasn't that much, it was probably the largest lump sum of money that I gotten up to that point. And without the 50-30-20 rule, it would have been really easy to just throw it away on random stuff. But following this rule helped me push my financial future ahead. So in using this method actually helped me pay for my car fully in cash at the age of 23. So this rule is actually a way of just splitting up your money into 3 different sections. Normally how people do it is they'll split up their money into 50% needs, 30% wants, and 20% savings. What is defined as a need is sort of something that you expect to pay monthly, like rent or insurance or groceries and food. Needs will take up 50% of your monthly income. Next 30% is your wants, which are probably stuff that would include clothes, travel, entertainment, and so on. And then your last 20% is your savings or investments. So savings would include saving up for a new car, saving up for some sort of move, or some sort of planned vacation. So for me, my 50% is actually just an entire slush fund, which I'll get to in a second. The next 30% is for savings, and the next 20% is for an emergency fund. And I say 20% for an emergency fund because I am going to assume that you might not have a fully funded emergency fund. And with the emergency fund, I'll also get into that and what that is in just a second. So for the 50% slush fund, how it works is that money is everything that you will spend in a month. And if you're wondering, 50% means that you need to be able to spend less than 50% of your income a month. So that's how I am actually saving up for a house really quickly, is because I do spend less than 50% of my income a month. So obviously the slush fund is pretty much supposed to cover everything that you spend in a month, like movies, food, going out with friends, gas, car payments, and so on. And so most of that will either be leaving your checking account as an ACH, or you'll be charging it all on a credit card and then paying that credit card every time you get paid. And so there's like a misconception that credit cards are inherently bad for you or they're the devil, but you should never think about it that way, because if you are responsible with your money, these credit card points will repay you in the end. That's why I am putting all my spending on credit cards as much as I can. So pretty much how my month works is at the beginning of the month I'll pay rent and I will pay the balance of my credit cards, and then throughout the month I'll just spend as I want freely. This is me also being frugal, or not necessarily frugal, but just being mindful of my spending. And so halfway through the month I get paid again and I'll pay off my credit card in full again. And so I'm getting free travel points from that, as well as building my credit. So I've talked about the 50% of where my money goes into the slush fund, and what I do next is I will put 30% into savings. And so savings for me is saving up for a house. And it might be for you saving up for a down payment on a car, or some sort of vacation with you and a significant other. This savings account is really just a way to spend your money guilt-free. And so the last 20% of your money will go into your emergency fund. And if you don't know what an emergency fund, it's actually just 3 to 6 months of expenses, monthly expenses that you expect to be using in the case of an emergency. So an emergency can include like getting laid off, or getting into some sort of accident, or the water heater in your house randomly exploding and you need to replace it. So in a previous video I talked about programming and my career, and I talked about how I got laid off, and so I was without work for about 3 weeks. And this emergency fund really helped me feel a little bit safer, because otherwise, if I had gotten into some sort of car accident at the time or had some sort of medical emergency, it would have been really tough to bounce back from that without getting into debt. So that's what this emergency fund is specifically for. So let's talk about what happens when you finally have secured your emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses. So at some point, you won't have to keep contributing to this emergency fund. You have to remember that an emergency fund is only really 3 to 6 months of expenses. You shouldn't really be saving up for an entire year of expenses unless you're like super scared that you won't be able to find a job for over a year. For me, I try to keep it on the low end because I don't expect to be in an emergency for that long. So once you've got that emergency fund in place, you can actually start rolling that 20% into your 30% of savings. So now that you're in sort of like a 50-50 rule, 50% is going into spending and 50% is going into saving. And that's how you really get the ball moving on a lot of things that you want in life. Like at this point, things start to move even faster. So at this point, when you're doing 50% spending and 50% saving, is when you're really able to get ahead in life and start investing in a lot of different things. And that's what is really great about this program or system that I'm on. Okay, so last part, let's talk about how to actually set this all up. So I use Wells Fargo, but I'm sure that you can do this with a lot of other banks, but I have 3 bank accounts set up. So I have a checking account for my living expenses, a checking account for my savings, and a savings account for my emergency fund. And if you didn't know and you have direct deposit with the company you're working at, you can actually tell the direct deposit to split up your money to each account individually. So obviously you would put 50% into your spending account, 30% into your savings, and then 20% into your emergency fund. And so this is all done automatically for you, and you won't have to think about it. And so you might be confused why I have a checkings account for my savings account. Well, so the reason why is that checking account is actually just sort of like a holding place for my money to move to other places. So as I mentioned before, I have all these bank accounts in Wells Fargo, but Wells Fargo's savings accounts actually have really bad savings and interest rates. So my money will actually leave Wells Fargo from my direct deposit directly into an Ally bank account, which has about 2% interest. I think that it's gone down at this point because the Fed has lowered interest rates, but it's still a lot higher than Wells Fargo's 0.01% APR. Other than my money moving into Ally, it'll also go into Vanguard in a Roth IRA. Obviously, with this system, you can still get yourself into tons of debt if you're just not careful, but using this system, you're much more aware of where your money's going, and I think that's the most important part, and that's how you get a real good head start on how to manage your money. Alright, so that's all I have today. I hope this short video really helps out those that don't really know where to start with their money. Given all this and following these rules, I've been able to pay for a car entirely in cash, and this is going to be a little bit of a surprise, but I actually put in an offer on a house today. Of course, there's no guarantee that we're going to get this house, but at age 26, I really didn't think that I would be able to accomplish these things, and I would attribute a lot of it to just making sure that I follow these financial rules that I've set for myself, and to never let my lifestyle get too far ahead of my money. And so that's what I want to tell you guys to do. But yeah, that's the 50-30-20 rule. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave a comment down below. If you like this video and you want to see more financial videos like this, make sure to give this a thumbs up. And if you're liking the content in general, just subscribe if you want to. Alright, this is John Heng, and I will see you next week. Peace.